Is the live stream on? Yep. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the CEO Performance Management Panel meeting of the Town of Gawler. Welcome those people that are joining us from on Zoom as well. I'd like to go through the statement of acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people. Respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as custodians of the Greater Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to living Kaurna people today. Roll call. I think we've got most of the councillors. Might be missing Jim Vallelonga at this stage. We'll give him a few minutes to see if he joins us. But I think everyone else is here. Declaration of interest. Any declarations of interest? No. No declarations of interest. Confirmation of the minutes and noting that the date of the last meeting was actually the 21st of October 2021, not the 7th of December. Someone
yep. I'm happy to move that way, the 21st of October.
Yep, thank you. Mayor, seconder, is that Councillor Samble?
Thank you, sir.
Yep. There's no discussion from anyone. I'll ask you all to vote on that. All those in favour, and I'll vote as well. So that's carried unanimously. Thanks, Chris. And business arising from the minutes. Any business arising from the minutes? If not, I'll move to the first decision report, which is the appointment of a deputy chairperson to the meeting. Would someone like to nominate or be nominated? Happy to. Councillor Koch, want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm quite happy to be nominated if someone wants to second me or someone wants to nominate me.
Happy to do so.
Thanks.
I'm happy to second.
Okay, so it looks like, does anyone else wish to be nominated? If not, if Chris, taking the minutes, could appoint Councillor Paul Koch as deputy chairperson in that spot. And we need someone then to move that motion.
I'll move that. I'm happy to move it.
Thanks, Mayor Redburn, and seconded by Councillor Samble.
Yep.
Discussion or debate? If not, I'll ask everyone to vote for or against using the voting panel. If you could all please vote. Thank you. So that's carried unanimously. Well done, Councillor Koch, as Deputy Chairperson of the panel.
Well done.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
I don't think Councillor Davies voted.
Oh, Councillor Davies, are you voting for or against? Sorry.
Oh, I did vote. I just already.
Yeah, I thought you may have voted.
Back off again.
Yeah,
it's because usually the staff press the button. David Barrett, I think, presses the button to make it all wipe again, but we have to turn ours back off at the moment.
Yeah, it's a bit manual, this. So we've got Councillor Vallelonga now joining us, which is good.
Hey, Jimmy.
He's still connecting. Also, I'll move to 6.2, the COC, where we've been asked to look at some legislative changes. I don't know whether Henry wants to make any comment on these changes or any the matters that are going through?
Not necessarily. Obviously, I thought it was prudent to bring this to the committee's or the panel's attention. But I'm just thinking whether, through the chair, that it might be of value to have Matt Hobby.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same.
Part of it, because he might have his own observations and thoughts about the legislation and what it means in terms of process.
Yeah, no, I agree. And welcome, Councillor Vallelonga, to the meeting. Thanks. We're just on 6.2. We've appointed as the Deputy Chairperson, Councillor Kosh. So you haven't really missed very much at all. And we're just, if we can invite Mr. Hobby in, please, Chris, that'd be good.
He's just disappeared from the waiting room.
Oh, no.
Got him.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
There he is. I've got a question for Matt Hobby.
He's still connected. He's on now, I think. So there's a question. Welcome, Matt. And there's a question for you straight up.
He's smiling, but he's not breathing.
Yes.
I'm sure he's there.
There we go. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, welcome to we're just on 6.2, which is looking at the legislative changes that are going through the new Local Government Act, and sort of after your opinion on those changes, which I think from my perspective look quite favourable to make sure there is a professional assisting the panel.
Yeah.
But there is a question straight up from the Mayor Karen Redmond to you, if you don't mind listening in for that.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've got a question around you have an independent member on the panel. That member might have HR experience or that, and then you've got the consultant assisting. And in the agenda, Kelledy Jones puts out circulars, and they've put out a circular on this very matter. And they're saying that if you use the independent consultant that you're using to assist you when you're perhaps, going, reviewing or getting advice on a new CEO or et cetera, there's a conflict. So they're saying to separate those two roles. I'm just wondering what your opinion is, Matt.
Yeah, if there was a situation where you had, and I'll just use us as the example because it's easier to tell the story. So quite often what happens is historically, if we were facilitating the performance review, we would still be asked to pitch for the recruitment if there was a CEO, if a CEO did vacate the role because of the intimate knowledge that we've built from the CEO performance review process. I guess I'd be questioning as to what the conflict would be, because the only way in which a CEO can be removed is by their own choice, or whether by the choice of the council, because they've obviously not been performing. So I would argue that it's not really a conflict of interest. Our role in this is to, the way I describe it is that our loyalty is to the entity. So in this case, it's the council. So the loyalty is to the entity, not to the individual, if that makes sense. So I don't really see it as being necessarily a conflict of interest in that way, but it would not surprise me if most councils, because they are probably risk averse when it comes to matters around conflicts of interest, that they would have different professional advice for a performance review and a different organisation to conduct the recruitment.
If I can, Chair, I've got another question, because the way I see it, you can get multiple independent opinions and you can get tied up in knots.
Correct.
And I just think that you devalue yourselves as members and your ability to make decisions. Yes, you can take advice from independent consultants such as yourself, Matt.
Yeah.
However, how many do you need? And that would concern me, that you'd have multiple people giving advice and it could make it difficult to actually make a decision.
Yeah. As I said, I would see them as being quite separate, separate matters, separate issues that we would be providing advice on, and one would conclude, and then the other one would. And if I guess if there was ever a question around the integrity of us as consultants, where we're trying to orchestrate. I mean, we can't really orchestrate that a CEO leaves the council, because what we're doing as part of the performance review process is to provide facilitation, really, where we're actually, to a certain extent, we're just umpiring the event, because we're sitting between the CEO and the panel and providing advice. So I don't really see it as a conflict of interest, but I do get a sense that some councils might err on the side of being less risky when it comes to those matters. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I know. I understand why it's done, Chair. David, you've been around for a little while, and I know that some councils haven't managed, recruiting a new CEO or not extending a CEO's contract. They haven't handled that very well, I don't think, and that's probably why we now have this requirement.
Yeah.
Would that be fair to say?
I agree, and it's actually a lot of it. There is under the Local Government Act. There's quite strict legislative requirements for the council and how it deals with the matter as well. And so it is quite strict, and the CEO is really the only council employee that the council sort of directs and hires. And I think that having the extra support is really important. I think, especially what can happen if things go wrong as well.
Yeah. So just another question, if I may, Chair, just on the process. We now, I think it's fair to say that we need to recruit an independent member. Is that correct? For the panel, or not?
Look, I don't think you have to for this review yet. I think it's when the new.
I see. I thought we had to now. Okay, so now okay, all right.
No,
there are some councils who do have that in place already. So it's the way it's heading, I guess, is probably what you're asking, is where are we going with this? And if you were to get someone on board, starting that process, it's not difficult to find someone. Typically what happens, I've been asked to be the independent person, and that means that obviously we can't then facilitate the review. So there's from our perspective, we can't do both. We can't be the independent member on the panel and also then the facilitator. That doesn't work. So quite often when we do get asked, we choose to do the facilitation, because that's probably where our skill set lies. I don't know, to be frank, I don't know if there are 68 different people in the market who would want to do this. It's not like chairing audit committees and what have you. So it's going to be a really new space, and I think it's going to be quite challenging for councils to be able to find, especially regionally. I think they're going to really struggle to be able to find someone who can sit through the volume of meetings that need to take place. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a transition period. That's one of the conversations that we've had with some of the lawyers to make it realistic, because it's very unrealistic for a small regional council to try and find someone who can be involved in their review, and their review process is very different than what you would see at the City of Adelaide. So because of the sheer size and the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting space, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just a question, I suppose, from the chair to Matt. Originally, when they were talking about this, it sort of, I sort of read into it that, especially for councils that weren't regularly doing sort of getting consultants in to do reviews and things like that, that was another way of looking at it, was to get the independent person on board. And now they're sort of looking at having both. Is that sort of changed a bit of the mindset, or?
I think so. Yeah, I think the direction is to, and again, each contract as it's currently written is different. What's going to happen post these reforms is all the contracts are going to be pretty much the same. So, the difference will be. I don't think there's a huge amount of difference, but the other thing also that will take place, and I'm sure perhaps Henry's across this more than I am because it's regarding his employment, but there is. My understanding is that none of the CEOs can necessarily be worse off from a conditions perspective and obviously a remuneration perspective. So there will be a period of transition. But I think the utopia that they're trying to get to is that all the CEOs are have the same contracts and the same terms effectively to create, because there is a significant variety in those contracts. So I think that's the direction that it's going to try and align more so with all the other councils, but because and the reason why I've raised that is that some of them have some of the contracts that I see, it's mandated that they have that there is an independent HR advisor involved in the process, and then there's others where the terms of reference for the CEO's performance review are relatively open-ended, and to a certain extent you could almost get away with doing a review every couple of years, and as long as you feel comfortable, you could just continue to offer extensions and renewals. So there is quite a bit of variety in those contracts, really depending on what the elected members at the time want when they recruit the CEO, or at the time when they negotiate an extension.
Yeah, and I think it was actually quite good, because something the CEOs have also brought in to make the councillors more accountable as well, which I think has been good too. Whether our CEO Henry's got any comments on this at all?
Yeah, sorry, David, just trying to find. Yeah, thank you for that. The only point of clarification or observation is that the whole legislative changes are going down the path of further independence. I thought I read in some of the information from Kelly that he was putting the proposition that the legislation could otherwise potentially require three additional consultancies and independents involved. And I was trying to find that through the documents, but I might have misread that. The only other thing, as I understand it, is that the provisions, and this is about the transition, is that these provisions are triggered once there's a new contract in place or a new CEO is appointed. So, for example, the duration of my contract, as I understand it, these provisions don't technically apply. It's not to say the council couldn't otherwise decide we do want to have an independent, as per our discussion just now. But yeah, that would be the trigger to then
Section 98 on page 11.
Have the Act, completely applicable.
Yeah, it doesn't apply currently for us. Yeah.
What you're looking for is on page 11, section 98, Henry.
Section 98.
Yeah.
It says section 98, the second paragraph.
Yeah.
There are 3 appointments or something.
Yeah.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah. Depending on the approach taken, it is not inconceivable that there are 3 appointments in this process.
Wow. Yeah. It's going from one extreme to the other pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You get these. You could potentially get 3 completely different opinions, and you get bamboozled. And I think 2 is probably where you sit, not 3. That would be quite confusing in my view. But yeah, that's.
And as Matt's saying, those 3 people would be very difficult for a number of us to.
Yeah, that's right. And you said it, Matt, for regional, and we're a regional council, whether we're not a metro council, we're a regional council. And if all the contracts are going to be the same, that won't work for, the majority of councils, because the majority of councils are regional in South Australia. So I think that's going to be an interesting transition of how you manage that. And it's unfortunately the tribunal is very city-centric. So I'm not sure how they'll understand regional needs and attracting, having an appropriate package to attract an appropriate and appropriately qualified candidate. I think that's going to be an interesting journey, I think.
Yeah, it may be quite expensive as well if you've already got someone who.
Well, there was a council down in the southeast that went through a procurement process for a CEO, and that CEO lasted less than 12 months, and they then went out again, and the feedback was that the consultant didn't really understand, or maybe they didn't give enough direction, I don't know. So they weren't clear enough of the type of person they wanted, but that person didn't fit very well at all and left very soon after. And I don't know the issues of that particular council, but yeah, and now they've got somebody who's they went through a different company and they had a much better outcome. So yeah, it's tricky, I think.
Does any other councillors like to make any comments on this, or if we're happy to move this motion of that we note these changes that are going on?
Yep, happy to do so.
Thanks, Councillor Samble. You're happy to move that. Seconded by
Councillor Koch.
Councillor Koch, yes. Thanks, Councillor Koch. I've got a couple of other little screens that pop up in the way, so I couldn't see the hand. I could see your face. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Is there any discussion or anyone that speaks the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please vote, and those against, please vote as well. So that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Chris. Move on to the next item. So we'll stay. Any items to be listed for discussion? I'll go through these agenda items before we move into any confidential. Any questions without notice? Motions without notice. Confidential reports, and we've got a confidential report. We've got a consultant here to help us with that. Would someone like?
I'm happy to move that way, Chair.
And explain why it's important.
Yep, I'm happy to do so. It's information, the disclosure of which involves the unreasonable disclosure of information concerning personal affairs of any person, in this case our CEO. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to go into confidence and have a confidential discussion in that regard.
Thanks, Mayor. And someone like to second that?
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor Samble. Would you like to make a comment as well?
Only that I think it's great that we've got Matt here tonight with us as well, and with the discussion that we've just had there. It's so good to have sort of that backup of what is happening and what direction we should take. So welcome, Matt, and I think it's great to have you on board with us. So I'm happy to second that motion.
Any discussion? If not, I'll ask everyone to please vote to move into confidence on this matter or not. You can vote for or against. So that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. So we will be moving into confidence and leaving the live stream. So thank you, those people that have listened in to the live stream on YouTube.
Councillor Hughes, can you click on the 3 more buttons at the bottom of the screen?
Yeah.
And you should have leave